So, welcome, Tina.
Good morning or almost afternoon, Jenelle. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited for our conversation because it's one of those human rights issues and big overlying issues in Canada that I have so much thought and hatred almost towards, but I don't actually know enough about it. But it's just like what we were talking about before. It just comes from your compassion and anyone's compassion for any of these huge issues. But then we always think, well, but who's going to do anything about it? We don't think we're going to do anything about it. And we also don't think we'll ever experience it. But I mean, based on your
Precisely.
story, you know the difference in that.
Yeah, precisely. I never thought becoming a grandmother would be what it was for us because you never know what's around the corner in life for you. But yes, that's why I wrote the book is that hopefully you don't have to experience what we went through to actually do something about it.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, and I'm going to fast forward now because I know you have lots of questions, Janelle, you read the book. And but at the end of the day, we have to remember this is our tax dollars here in Canada paying for these systems, okay? So, and it was incredibly frustrating dealing with it, but it's also frustrating knowing that the government is administering my taxpayer dollars by funding this system.
Well, let me ask you this to start us off. What was your experience with the social services industry, child protective services, and just all of those systems prior to your own experience? Or what was your view on it all? Or did you have any view?
Oh, no, I had a view. I had no experience, but
Mhm.
I thought that when a child was taken by a social worker, it was a good thing, and that the social worker was helping that child find a better home.
Mhm.
What I know now is that very little narrow opinion that I have is a fraction of the number of children who are actually in the child welfare system.
Mhm.
Because there are that few that truly do need protection and they need a better home and they need to be taken away from the parents.
Mhm.
But if you talk to social workers who quit the system because it wasn't what they signed up for, they said that that percentage is maybe 5%, maybe 5%. So that is way too large of a percentage considering the damage that is being done to children. Having 95% of children taken away for some of the stupidest reasons, you would just not believe them. The system is not serving in the best interest of the child. It just isn't.
Well, you made a good point in your book, and you were part of this group that when you watch a child get taken away from a family, you assume there's valid enough reasons. And we always side with the child. But until you know the full story, there's often way too many layers involved that it's, as you say, not actually in the best interest of the child at the end of the
No,
day.
no, it's not. No. And I think that because of the complexity of families and how sensitive families are, and I really can't think of any other way that families can, that families are complicated and they are sensitive, but it doesn't belong in a court of law. I think our courts are clogged up enough just dealing with, and or they should be with pedophiles or rape or murders and so lumping parents and treating them like criminals and lumping them in with all of these other criminals or and accused criminals in court, it's clogging up the system. And so a lot of these things I think should be done outside of court because the parents are hauled into court 9 times out of 10 they've been targeted because they're poor. They don't know what their rights are. They don't know how to fight. They have no resources. They don't know to like keep their mouths shut and get a lawyer, and they get exploited because of that. And I saw, like, I can close my eyes right now and I can visualize young moms I saw in the courtroom, and they were like so confused. And they were just zombies because they did not understand what was happening to them and they lost their kids.
Hmm. And I mean, let's tell the audience kind of what happened to you. Let's bring you right back to this all started in 2017, correct?
Yes, my granddaughter was born in February of 2017. And I was not there when she was born. I received a phone call from Suzanne, who is our family friend, and my daughter wanted Suzanne there because Suzanne is a doula. She trained in midwifery, and my daughter, part of her birthing plan was she wanted Suzanne there. And so Suzanne drove that night from Vancouver, and because of because of the events surrounding when Bianca, I don't, that's not her real name, but that's what I call her in the book. When Bianca was born, Suzanne just missed the delivery by a few minutes because Bianca came out on her own. Actually, there weren't even any nurses in the ring when she was born. They all came running in, and there was a baby on the table. My daughter delivered the baby without the nurses there. So Bianca, in her own way, she's like calling the shots. It's like, yep, I'm coming into this world my way. And 2 weeks later, when she was taken by social workers, I had a very, strong spiritual connection with her, and she's like, "Nope, Grammy, I'm calling the shots. Don't worry, I'm coming back to you." And, yeah, so it was a pretty powerful experience, and,
Mhm.
so I think I'm jumping ahead a little bit because,
No, you're not.
I know that you read the book, so I don't wanna confuse your listeners.
So
So they
this
can
is my question, and you can stop me if I'm treading on bad territory, but did you have like a rocky relationship with your daughter at this point while she was pregnant? Or you guys were just in different provinces, so you didn't talk
we're
all the time?
Yeah, we were just in different
Yeah,
provinces, and we didn't talk all the time. When
fair.
she found out she was pregnant, she was actually a little worried about telling me, and
She's young, right?
yeah, well, no, she was 20, I think she was 25.
Okay. Yeah.
No, 26 when she realized she was pregnant, but she wasn't married, and it was kind of a surprise because she'd been with this guy that I didn't really like for quite a few years, and for her, getting pregnant was and she never got pregnant with him, and then boom, all of a sudden she got pregnant, so it was just kind of a surprise because she wasn't trying for it, but then she thought maybe in the back of her head she couldn't get pregnant or whatever. Anyway, she kinda said that that was
Of course.
a blur in her life because she was just in the wrong town, and she really needed to come back to Alberta.
You mentioned that a lot in the book. It was a shithole town.
Yeah, it was, yeah, I mean, it
Why did
was
she
just
go there?
she followed this guy out again. This guy didn't really, like very much, and she moved. I know she was making a mistake, and I was telling her she was making a mistake, but she didn't listen to her mom. And
Do we ever, Tina?
yeah, well, I'm sure she's not. I'm sure she's not the first, and I'm sure she won't be the last. So when she got pregnant, she realized she was pregnant. She thought I would react, which I did not. And I'm like, well, no, you're a 26-year-old girl. You're sexually active. Like, duh, I guess it wasn't what you expected, but usually when you get pregnant, you have to just suck it up. Like, you're
There's no
about
such pregnancies that are planned.
yeah, no, it's
Even if
just
you're ready for one, it's not
yeah,
planned.
it's just the way it is. I did say to her though that, and I'm sure a lot of if you have Christian listeners, they might not like this very much, but I did say to her, it's your decision whether or not you decide to, carry this pregnancy to term or not. Whatever your decision is, I will support you. It's your body and it's your life and it's your decision. Having said that, I knew that she would keep the baby though, because I
Yeah.
ever since she was a little girl, she's always looked forward to being a mom. She just was
Mhm.
like, like a lot of little girls playing with their dolls and like a little mini mom. So even though the circumstances might not have been perfect for getting pregnant, people change, and and becoming a mother is such a transformation for a lot of men and women, when they do become parents, and my daughter, she was no exception to that. She has become a wonderful, wonderful mom. Yeah.
I'll say this from the little that I know of you and reading the book and chatting to you, I'm I'm still really confused about why Child Protective Services got involved in the first place.
Okay.
And I'm sure you
That
are too. I
that
know why. And
yeah.
it often comes from a quote unquote concerned citizen reaching out and being concerned about something they shouldn't be concerned about. But I don't think that that concerned citizen, when they make a quick call, realizes the floodgates they just opened.
Yes. I'm gonna agree with that scenario in general. I
Yeah.
don't think that's what was happening in our case.
What do you
I'll
think was happening?
elaborate I'll elaborate a little bit more, and it's speculation because I don't have access to their notes. I don't know what they were talking about behind, closed doors. But after Bianca was taken from us, we would be walking down the street in Shithole, BC, in this little town, and I actually recognized one person there from Banff. And we got to talking, and I told him why we were there and what we were going through. But people would tell us they're trying to adopt her out. And I would be like, what? They're no, they are trying to adopt her out. Like, what is they're trying to adopt her out? They only took her like, 2 days, 3 days ago. What do you mean they're trying to adopt her out? So now, 4 years later, I know what they were saying was right, but I know better now because of Suzanne that that process would have taken them a lot longer. And because we did everything right. I was there with my daughter. I didn't react. I tried to keep my calm, try to keep cool. I didn't lash out. I didn't fight with my daughter in front of them. I was just very I was very confused and I was very quiet. I was just trying to assess like what the hell is going on. So going back to that adoption in BC, they can't adopt out a child like within 2 days. They have to go through process of showing the judge that the child is in an unstable environment. And a judge, any judge worth their salt, is not going to take that after what, 2 or 3 days as a track record. In
Mm-mm. They don't
BC,
have a big enough a case for it
no,
yet.
well, there's not enough of a timeline. In BC, they would have had to wait 1 year to apply to the courts for what's called a CCO, a continuing custody order. And that's only if they can't get the parent's signature. So if they can get the parent's signature ahead of time, then they can go ahead and adopt out the baby.
Mhm.
But until then, they have to wait that year. So knowing now what I didn't know then, they were never going to get that child. Like it would have been over my dead body.
Mhm.
But it still didn't it still didn't change the fact that when I was walking down the street, strangers were telling us, they're trying to adopt her out. I'm like, what the you know?
I know. When I read that part, that shocked me as well. You quote in your book, you say social workers can pick and choose which children they apprehend, not because they're most at risk, but because they're more adoptable. And
Yes.
what that makes me wonder is what's everyone's motive behind here? And also, what's getting measured? You mentioned also in your
Yeah.
book that sometimes with these social workers and people that work at the MCFD, they often get bonuses for how many children they get to adopt. Yeah, I'm a big believer of what gets measured gets done. So
Yeah.
there's some broken systems here.
Yeah. That was a rumor we heard. Obviously I don't work in the system
Tina,
and
there's a
I'm
reason
not
why
sure.
things are rumors.
Yeah, well, I guess so, but I mean, if I had some investigative chops, I would definitely be trying to follow the money on that one. I mean, how like that it's definitely a gauge of our moral compass if that is actually true, that they get bonuses for every baby that they apprehend and put into the system. I don't even have words to explain my absolute disgust
It
and
disgusted me
how
as well.
yeah, how but I do call this as a blatant conflict of interest is that you can't have the same ministry like MCFD who have the power to take children also have the same power to adopt them out. It's a conflict of interest. And I mean, it doesn't take very much thought to realize that, hey, wait a second. Yeah. Tina's right. Actually,
Mhm.
you can't have that power to take children, but then also to adopt them out. Even though it might be separate departments, it's still under the same umbrella. So I don't know what the solutions are. I just think right now we need to start asking the right questions. Okay.
You called it a term and it made me uncomfortable and it was a big claim, but I think there's some truth in it. And you used the phrase child trafficking.
Yeah, yeah. You're
Yeah,
not the first person to say that. Some people have said to me, I said, "Well, you know what? I don't have the stomach for it. I don't." But it is. When you're moving a child
exactly.
from point A to point B and money is changing hands and you're traumatizing that child and you're traumatizing the family, and there's just so much confusion. I'm sorry, what else do you call it? To me, that's child trafficking.
Well, when I read that paragraph, I was like, "God damn, Tina!" I was like,
Yeah,
you're laying it down heavy here." And
yeah.
then I sat back and I thought, I'm like, well, what am I reading right now? What is that phrase when you break it down? And I'm like, I agree with you.
Mhm. So follow the lifetime of a child who is government sanctioned trafficked, okay? So
Mhm.
they bounce around the foster care system to how many homes in 1 year? How many homes in 2 years, 3 years? They end up being a teenager. Perhaps they're abused in that home. They run away. They go to the streets. What happens on the streets? They sell the do you see where I'm going with this?
Keep the cycle going. They become
Yeah,
homeless. They live on the streets. They get into drugs. They get pregnant, and the cycle starts again.
yeah.
We can call it
Oh,
what it is.
well, to me, it starts with that first apprehension. So a family who might have needed a bit of help, and I'm not, again, I'm not. Some families need a little help. Some families need a lot of help. But parenting is a skill, and a skill can be learned. Okay, you don't even me. When I had my baby, I didn't just snap my fingers and know how to parent. It came over time. It came fueled with love and commitment to my daughter, and I learned the parenting skills required to raise my daughter.
Of course. Well, it's interesting to me
Mhm.
how a lot of the times they cherry pick who they hire as social workers. They hire new female graduates without any kids
Yeah,
because they don't have that emotional, compassionate connection where they can look at it as black and white.
yeah.
And do you think that's the right way to do it?
I guess any solutions would have to be multi-pronged. And just like I say in the book, that I don't like, I certainly didn't appreciate their one size fits all attitude when it came to how they treated us. I certainly don't think there's a one size fits all solution. I think it's really calm. There's a lot of burnout with social workers, and it seems to be it's quite a horrific cycle because they're hiring these young social workers who may or may not know what they're getting into, but that they get in there and they're very stressed and they're overwhelmed with 25, 30, 50 cases that a human being can't possibly stay on top of, and then they burn out and quit, and then they bring in another social worker and another social worker. So I but then, okay, so maybe that social worker has the skills to become a good social worker, but they're quitting because they're overwhelmed. Okay, well, then look at their caseload. How many of these kids actually need to be taken away from their parents instead of having sort of in-home supports if the parents need a little bit of help? And then dumping those cases on a social worker who then quits and gets overwhelmed, and then you get another. Do you see what I mean? Like,
I do.
I don't even know what the scope of the how big the scope of this problem is to understand that I think solutions have to be it can't be a one fits all solution. Maybe that has to be one aspect of it, but then there's gotta be other aspects of providing solutions for this system.
It breaks my heart. So I started in a business degree when I went to university, and after my first year, I almost switched to social work. I gave it a lot of thought. That was really what I wanted to do. I didn't. I am glad what I ended up doing, finishing business. Now I'm a real estate agent. I can make bigger changes with money as opposed to high caseloads. But the way I see it, it's a lot of people that go into social work, especially young females, they're going into it to make a difference. And like
Mhm.
you said, they're burned out so quickly, but they went in with good intentions. And the
Yes.
amount of bureaucracy and paperwork and burnout, they end up not achieving anything they really wanted to
Yeah.
in this
Yeah,
world.
and which is unfortunate because I think that if someone goes into social work with those intentions, that that's what we need to nurture because
Mhm.
then you know that that's in the best interest of the child because they're really doing it from their heart and wanting to help, you know? And it's interesting you should bring that up because I just had a very heated conversation with a colleague yesterday about changing the system. Can you change the system from within? And she was advocating for that. And I said, no, you can't change the system from within. What has to happen is from the outside, people, Canadians have to put pressure on the system, and it has to be a multi-pronged approach on how to start addressing the problems, measuring the scope of this problem, and start little by little by little addressing certain areas that can be improved, you know, in the best interest of the child. So I don't think one social worker with good intentions going in can change the system. It has to be changed from outside with a lot of pressure from a lot of people, you know. And so that's the big argument I had with my colleague yesterday. So
I agree with both. I mean, we've watched a lot of beautiful movies of one protagonist wanting to make a big change and it's all on their shoulders and they can't do it alone.
no, no.
Movies like Freedom Writers, movies like anything,
Mm,
where
mm,
Aaron Brockovich, like
yeah.
not just one person can change anything, but you can't tell me that there's many people, social workers included, people that work for MCFD that don't know that this entire thing is broken, but they go in and work each and every day.
Yes. And I think what
What's
happened.
stopping them from making a change if they know what they're doing is not working?
Well, because they like their paycheck, but I'll use an example. I think that a lot of times they go in and they'll do their little job, but they don't see how that contributes to the overall big picture of this machinery that is, you know, taking babies away. So I had gotten my baby girls out of BC back to Alberta and everything was going tickety boo. We were just serving out the TCO, the temporary custody order, and the supervision orders. In that time, they wanted me to sign yet another thing, which would,
Always a
yeah,
signature, hey?
yeah, always looking for that signature. And then, in addition to the four social workers that we had already been dealing with, I got yet another call from another social worker one day, just wanting to confirm where we were living, my, you know, my name and birth date and all the, you know, all the information that they need for their, you know, to go digging up the dirt or whatever. But
Filling
she,
out paperwork, not
so what
solving a
she's,
damn thing.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. So she's just looking at what her little task is that day, filling out the paperwork, but she can't see how, you know, of course I didn't give her the time of day. Like, well, you've got all this information. Yeah, bye. Have a
Talk to your
nice day.
colleagues.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's just like by then I was like, you know, realizing that the less you say with them, the better because they'll go and twist whatever you say anyway. But
I gathered that.
so that was an example of she doesn't realize how her little insignificant job for the day is just contributing to the overall mechanism that is perpetuating the lies in the system, you know, like, and it's just blatant lies. I mean, another time around that same time that I got this call from this newbie social worker, I got a call from Winky Face Kathy again,
I
wanting
hate
to,
her.
you know, yeah, just,
She is the ultimate antagonist of this
yeah.
story.
Yeah, she's just you know what, though, the
Every
thing
time I
is
use
that
a winky face emoji from now
I
on, I'm
know,
gonna
I
think
know,
about
I
that. It's gonna
know,
haunt me.
I know. I'm sorry I wrecked that for everybody, but it's just it used to drive Suzanne crazy
I
when
love Suzanne, by the way.
yeah, yeah, she's just the best person. She's the best person, like, just her and then the story of Delana,
Yeah,
with,
that's
like,
a
her
good one.
mother and Jamie and Marilyn. They're just the
Sweet
nicest
family.
people, all
Yeah.
of them, you know? And they just didn't deserve this to happen to them at all. It's just it's absurd. It really is. Oh, anyway, she's just
She's a
one
paper pusher.
well, and but she's answering to somebody else, right?
I know.
So
And
like
they're
that,
answering to someone else, and they're
yeah,
answering to someone
yeah,
else. And
yeah,
it's a
exactly.
whole
Yeah,
mess.
exactly, exactly. So that last court date when we were in that little room, and I, you know, I don't know if I think I portrayed this well enough in the book. My sense of frustration with Winky Face Kathy, it was like over the roof. And actually, I don't think I mentioned this in the book, but I did get the opportunity to tell her to her face, it's none of your business. Okay. Like, because she was still poking and prodding around about looking for weaknesses and looking for something she could
Very manipulative.
exploit. And I just shut her down. I said, it's none of your business. Right. And so, like, it's very, very unchristian, like for me to say, but it felt so good telling her that.
Oh, I would have. Well, the scene in your book where there was something happening and you were in her office and your daughter said something that your granddaughter's dad died and you were telling Kathy, like, oh,
Oh,
he died. And Kathy was about to give your daughter a hug. The
yeah,
audacity.
yeah, I know.
You are orchestrating our lives being ruined, and now
Yeah,
you suddenly care and want to give me a hug. Get
yeah,
away from me.
yeah, no, but I think that's what they did before I got
Tina, I'm
there.
surprised you didn't reach across the table and
Yeah.
slap her.
Yeah, I know. I know there was I think the only time really where I wanted to reach over there and gouge her eyes out was that last court date where I had to hear her say for about the fifth time, all of these shortcomings that my daughter had done in the past. She never once acknowledged any of the good that was happening, which was current.
Mhm.
It was all just going to the into the past and digging up all this dirt that they kept presenting to the judge over and over and over again. So by then, that was about the fifth time. And that's when I wanted to lunge across the courtroom and gouge her eyes out, which of course I didn't do because then I would have lost my grandbaby.
Yeah,
The
you would
judge
have
would have,
lost a lot of things.
yeah, I would have lost a lot of things, not just my temper, but,
Oh
but
my God.
tell you what, if Winky Face Kathy ever reads my book,
Tell her to
then
call me.
yeah, I'm telling you, she'll sure. And the thing is that the social workers in that moment when I had that spiritual connection to my grandbaby, they did not know that would have happened. Like, how could they know? Their life doesn't come with closed captions like that. So if they would have known then that come hell or high water over my dead body, they were never going to get that child. She does not belong to you. It's that simple. She is our baby. And you were gonna have to figure out how to murder me and get me out of the picture because I'm standing by my daughter's side. She made mistakes, but she loves this child, and right now, that baby is well, she's not a baby anymore, she's 4 years old, but she is exactly where she's supposed to be right now.
Mhm. At the beginning of the book, and even when I met you, I know there's a temper inside of you. I know. So, what I admired a lot throughout your situation is that it must have killed you to keep your composure most times,
It did. Yeah,
but you knew it was in the best interest.
yeah. Well, I knew that in court, you really had to keep quiet and let the lawyer do the talking, and we were very fortunate that we trusted Dan, like, we did honestly felt he wasn't doing things in our best interest, but he knows how to present things in court. That very last court date, again, we had gone to court with all of this we had tried to collect paperwork, and it's so hard to prove how much you love and how committed you are to your baby on paper, but we did, we tried. We collected documents and letters of reference and clean drug tests. My daughter took it upon herself to have drug tests done, and everything again was right across the board clean. We went to court with all this paperwork, and so in my daughter's head, she was probably thinking, "Okay, we get to show the judge that." But that's not like, we were never given an opportunity to present that evidence. So when we were in court, standing at the bar, I could feel my daughter, like, shaking and starting to twitch, and she turned to me and she said, "Mom, what about all the, paperwork?" And I just very, very quietly just did this, put my finger to my lips to tell her to hush, and she did. She just kept her mouth shut. So, yeah, I had to keep my composure, but then, I'm a 50-year-old woman, I have a lot more maturity, and my daughter, fortunately, she trusted me. She trusted Suzanne, and she just did what she was told, and in the end, we won.
After a long battle, though.
Yeah, it wasn't just that it was a long battle, it was the most stressful, confusing, humiliating battle with the highest stakes that I can imagine. This child, the custody of this baby. Like, I can't think of anything more important in life to fight for, and how unprofessional and how flippant this whole process was. Like, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And what is disgusting is the fact that we're paying for it. Like, our taxpayer dollars
Don't
are
get me
paying
started.
for this, yeah, this joke. So it's absolutely infuriating. And Janelle, you said I have a temper. Damn right I do. Like
I do too. So
this is
that's where
just
I why I recognize it.
this is just beyond belief how, unfair this is to children. And like, for example, in Suzanne's case, those boys didn't have a chance because of their mother, but they had a chance with Suzanne, and then they were just ripped away from her. It's just, it makes my blood boil.
Makes my blood boil. For the audience's clarification, if you want to tell them a bit about Suzanne. So Suzanne, as we mentioned, is a family friend, and she had the boys taken away in what year?
Almost 10 years now. I think the
Yeah.
boys would be almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Uh,
So for context for the
so
audience, so Suzanne worked as a doula, worked in daycares. A lot of her work was helping single mothers be able to care for their children and get rehab and whatnot. So her work was all part of this situation. And then Suzanne, Tina's friend, ended up being in a situation where she was helping a mom who just had a kid. And basically, the biological mom was like, I want you to take the kid. Like, I can't take this kid, you take it. And she ended up like taking the kid, and the same biological mom had another boy, kind of went through the same cycle. Suzanne took the other kid in. And then, yet, long story short, the MCFD and social services ended up taking these two boys from Suzanne. And get this, based on whatever narrative they put together, but yet Suzanne was still able to keep her job and the job she did, which was funded, long story short, by the same people taking these kids away.
it's just,
That's the part that messes
yeah,
with my brain. They're
yeah,
they're trying to paint her as like an unfit parent or unfit caregiver, yet you can still continue doing your job as a doula, as a daycare worker. You know, how does that make any
yeah,
sense?
yeah. It doesn't make any sense. Suzanne, with her other skills that she had with children, she would also run a day home in Vancouver. So when they went to Suzanne's house, she had her older biological son with her. She had a little girl that she was babysitting. Okay. And she had Teddy. They just came in and took Teddy. So,
How
and
does that make any
totally,
sense?
yeah, and
If
totally
she's an unfit
shattered.
caregiver,
Yeah,
why are you leaving her with another kid?
very good question. Susan had to here she was just shattered, and Teddy had been taken away. She had to phone the other mom as an emergency saying, come get your daughter. I'm sorry, I can't take care of her. I'm dealing with this right now. It is confusing, but people who are listening to this and who have had this exact same situation happen to them, they will understand what I'm talking about. MCFD or CPS will come in and they will take away one specific child, but leave you with another child. It doesn't make any sense at all, but they do it all the time.
I just don't understand how these types of services can go to a daycare and just take a kid, and yet the daycare workers have no say in it, can't stop anything. Like, you'd think there like have to be some sort of paperwork or documentation to say, hey, this is what happened. We need to kind of take this child into our protection.
Yeah. That to me, I don't even try to attempt to explain that. But that to me is the impunity that ministers like MCFD have been able to operate under for so long. That is a testament to their power, how they can go in and interview kids, pull them out of class and interview them at school without an advocate there. Like, how absurd is that?
It's so
And
messed up.
it what happens all the time.
That's so
And
embarrassing for a kid. That's traumatic in itself.
exactly, exactly. Like, how is that not traumatic? Being disrupted from your class and pulled
How does
out and
anyone at
being
a school allow it? Like principal, teachers, how do they even
yeah,
allow that? Aren't they supposed to
yeah,
be protecting?
Janelle, you need to go and you need to like do your social work career there and start asking these questions, okay? And I like
Start banging
what
on some doors myself.
I can't do it because I'm too impassioned and I'm too biased, but you're asking all the right questions and we need to start asking these same questions as Canadians with integrity and who, like to have a little bit of say in how our tax dollars are being spent. I mean, these are legitimate, valid questions.
No. I want to talk about your situation more. We're talking about overarching issues. I do not understand. Well, let's be clear to the audience. I don't understand a damn thing about this situation.
Yes.
But another thing I don't understand is where the hell did you get the strength to get through all of this? Like, you went on a full year battle going through this. And according to you, dealing with this for a full year is a very small amount in comparison to how other people deal with these situations.
Yes.
How do you not just give up?
You don't know. Well, I think that's what they expect for a lot of people to give up. And they absolutely bombard you because that's what they want is for you to give up. There's a couple of things I did not mention in my book. The baby was born in February. She was taken in March. We got her back, and I got my family out of BC in April. And providing that provincial barrier was awesome because there was only so much the social workers could dig up without a signature. And they tried to get my signature, but couldn't. What happened in May was that they just assumed that my daughter was double dipping. Do you know what I mean? That
Yeah,
means? Yeah.
in terms of money, like
Yeah,
taking money from the
exactly.
government.
So they don't even ask, they
She
just
should
assume
be.
that she was double dipping. She gets this phone call out of the blue that she's being charged with fraud and to get a lawyer. And this is a phone call that comes like somebody representing themselves as Revenue Canada, and she is being investigated for fraud and to get a lawyer. And like again, my daughter was just like, "What?" Like and hung up, you know. But it's just so it had to have been them.
She's like, fraud. I wish I had the time and energy to do that right now.
Yes, sure.
I would
I'll just
love to be someone else right now.
here, let me just get a pen and paper. I'll just add it to my list,
Oh,
of what I need to do right now. So they do kind of expect you to give up. And if there are parents out there who are overwhelmed and dealing with this, I'm telling you, just don't give up. Don't look at the overwhelming big picture. Just look at the little tasks that you can do each and every day to keep your sanity and to keep positive steps towards being reunited with your children. I'm not going to say for sure that it's going to work, but you will have your own human dignity if you keep fighting them little by little by little by little and don't give up. Just don't give up and don't sign anything. If the social workers slide a piece of paper in front of you and they say, blah, 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 sign here, don't sign it. Like, just keep your mouth shut, lawyer. I want a lawyer. Nope. I'm going to wait for my lawyer. Sorry. No, sorry. Couldn't hear you. I need my lawyer. I can't stress that enough. The more you just keep your mouth shut around them, the better. And don't sign anything and don't give up. If you don't fight for your kids, nobody else will.
it goes with anything. The only people who care about you is you.
Well,
Everyone else is just doing a job and getting it done and clocking out.
well, fortunately, we had a lot of people who cared about us, so we had a pretty good support team. But I'm just one Grammy.
What is the difference between a mother daughter relationship and a grandmother granddaughter relationship from your
Yeah,
perspective? It's
yeah,
different, hey?
it is. It's compounded. It's love compounded. If I can make a long answer short, because all that love that you had for your baby, you remember it and it's compounded because now you have another little baby. But I will say that during this experience, I probably identified a little more with dads. And I say that because I didn't carry this baby in my body, but I loved that baby even before she was born because she was going to be my grandchild. Do you know what I mean? So men, even though they're not carrying the baby, they love that child because that's about to be their son or their daughter.
Well, that brings up an interesting question. Obviously, your situation, you are in the grandmother's shoes, but are advocating to get this baby back into yours and your daughter's life. A lot of times, child protective services are involved when it's the mom and the dad fighting. And a lot of times, the dad is getting pushed out of the picture, even
Yeah.
though he did nothing wrong.
Yeah. I think that they perpetuate a lot of this discourse in families. And I think that they will pit one parent against another. Like they tried
To
to do
feed
that
their
with
own narrative.
yeah. And they tried to do that with my daughter and I because it was a mother and a daughter relationship. It was probably a different dynamic, but they're very, I'm going to use the word gaslighting because I don't have a lot of experience with it until 2017. But then that year, it's like, okay, they're very good at this, actually. They should get a bachelor, gaslighting 101, because they're very good at knowing what buttons to push to get couples who are already very stressed out and have a united and different love for their baby, how to pit them one against the other, and then in the confusion, just make it worse. And again, this is not in the best interest of the child. How is it in the best interest of the child to have the mom and dad fighting? How is it in the best interest of the child to have the grandmother and a mother fighting? Like, I know in our case, there were two things that happened that MCF didn't bank on. Number one, they didn't bank on me dropping my life, driving from Edmonton to shithole BC, and being with my daughter every step of the way. Even though she made mistakes, I know she made mistakes. From here on in, I'm here and I know what the capacity of my daughter is. And I know my daughter better than you people. Okay. I raised her. I know that she's going to be a great mom. And the second thing that they didn't bank on was the father dying. Because when he died, they kind of took a big step back and went, oh shit. That takes out one of their huge narratives that they always do, which is pit one parent against the other one. And even our lawyer said it to us. And
They're looking at cards to play.
yeah, as awful as it was to say this, but he even said to us, this actually kind of helps your case a bit. Like, I didn't know then what he meant, but I know now. That's what he meant.
Absolutely.
He was a good lawyer. He followed the policies, which is more than I can say for the social workers, because even though they have these policies that are supposed to take the child as a last resort and work with the family and, in the best interest of the child, I just saw, uh, to me, those are just words on paper that they present to the public. The behavior that I saw was the exact opposite of those policies. Yeah.
What was fascinating to me is how they skip over the next of kin family and they go right to foster families.
I know.
Why?
Yeah, I know. That's People keep asking me that and they're like, "Well, what'd you do tonight?" I didn't do anything. I wasn't under any investigation, but they have to give her to you first. I said, "Finally, Aaron, like again, yesterday I had a very heated conversation with one of my colleagues and that issue came up. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. That's what they did. I was right there in the room. They took my granddaughter from my arms and gave her to the foster parents. I have no criminal record, no drugs, no alcoholic issues, nothing. That's why I really question what their motives were. That's why I really question, okay, was there a family waiting to adopt this child? And they just had to make us fit their narrative for what they wanted to do because they weren't objectively looking at the facts of the situation. And the facts of the situation I was right there and they took my granddaughter from me and gave her to strangers in foster care. They turned out to be very nice people, don't get me wrong, but I didn't know that at the time. To
Course,
me, at
they're
that
the
moment,
enemy to you. Of
yeah. Well, at that time, they were strangers, like, they weren't even
course.
the enemy, I just didn't understand, like, it was just so confusing, it was just so confusing what was going on and why.
Put yourself in their shoes for a second. What do you
And
think's going through their head? They're
yeah,
obviously being told a different narrative.
yeah, they are, because when they came into the room, they said to my daughter, "Oh, we don't know what you've done." So they've obviously just been told there's a baby that needs to be taken care of. Be at our office, at 4 o'clock on the Friday because then woohoo, we're closed for the weekend. We don't have to deal with this. Meanwhile, they leave us absolutely traumatized for the weekend.
And what's really sad is no one's winning in this situation.
No.
Obviously, you've won in the end because you do have your granddaughter, but during the actual situation, nobody is winning. Your granddaughter is being passed around to multiple families. You and your daughter's heart are broken. Suzanne is watching this all play out once again, something that's happened to her. The foster
Mhm.
family is then getting this beautiful baby and then getting the baby taken back, and it's like they've already developed a bond with her and got everything set up and got excited about it. Who the hell wins?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that, Janelle, but I'm
Mhm.
just going to clarify a little bit. Okay. The foster family were an older couple. And
Mm.
I think, again, MCFD is very skilled at manipulation. They put the baby into foster care with an older couple so it would be perceived as only being temporary, because the foster mom said, "Oh, we don't want any babies. We don't want to adopt the baby," kind of thing. That's what they're telling my daughter, right? So that would have just been a quick stop, because I think in their systematic routine of taking the babies, what would have happened if the baby's father hadn't have died, and if all these other things hadn't have happened, which helped us, was that they would have moved the baby 100 miles away immediately to make it difficult for the family to maintain visits. At that point, what they were understanding about me was that I had come from Edmonton. I had my own car. We were staying in a hotel room. I was paying for all this. We were mobile. If they moved the baby to another foster family 100 miles away, we would have just followed. So we were able to maintain the visits. And by the end of the 27 days, the foster dad did admit to us that he didn't understand why she was taken in the first place.
I mean, you quoted a different book in your own book where it said 9 out of 10 children are removed from good families.
Yes.
What the
Oh,
hell?
yeah, I know. I don't know, Janelle. I want my book to at least start asking these questions,
It's starting
because
conversations right here
and
now.
starting and I guarantee that these conversations aren't going to be fun. They're not, these are not going to be fun conversations, but these are conversations we need to have, because that is why the system has been able to perpetuate and to fester to the place where it is right now, because
Mhm.
nobody talks about it. They just assume, oh, they had their reasons for taking the baby and the babies are better off. They're not better off. They are dying in foster care. There's
Yeah.
a report that came out just within the last week, and all of the child welfare advocates are getting on this about how many children have died in Alberta foster cares. And the story of Delana Sullivan in my book.
It's
Yeah,
heartbreaking.
I know. I can't talk about it because I always end up crying, because when we stopped at that gravesite where Delana is buried, I would not have known there was a graveyard there. I wouldn't. It was just out in a country road, and the only people that know who's there, of course, is her mother and her grandmother and the people who went to the funeral. And even me, I went to visit the grave, and if I went to drive by there, I don't think I could find that little graveyard again, because
Mhm. So, what you're saying is these injustices are happening, no one's being held accountable, and no one's telling the stories later,
no. No, they're just burying them. And that
literally and figuratively.
they're being buried in Canadian bureaucracy. What has happened to that poor mother, Jamie, having to bury her 4-month-old baby, and how she was treated? Like, it,
And then they're about to charge her 10 grand if she
yes,
spoke about it.
yes, yeah. And
Yes.
they,
What the up?
I know. And so her and the mother had to go to court to get the publication ban lifted so they could talk about their daughter. And for once they won, like, but that wasn't the court case they wanted to win. What they wanted to win was, to get the baby back, but it was just the night before their presentation hearing when Delana died. So it's just it is like, it's just beyond messed up. It's
Let me ask you this. When you look at everything that's happened, where do you think it begins? And what's that first immediate daily step that we could be taking to stop all of this injustice? Like, what everyone's going to sit back and listen to this story today, and they're going to leave this the way thinking the way they came into it. It's not my problem. I don't think I'm the person to be doing anything about it, but there is. Like, what is something that we can all be doing?
so I think the answer to that would be, and this is just one thing, it's not by any stretch of the imagination the only solution, but I think one thing that needs to happen is that there has to be a way to start validating the calls that go into social workers. Because I think a lot of those calls from the very start are invalid. It might be somebody getting revenge on someone, and then they're calling child protection, okay? And so there needs to be some kind of punishment for someone who abuses that. For example, people who are getting a divorce, and then one parent will use it against another parent. I heard of like one dad who repeatedly called just to spite the mother. I'm not going to say who it was, but so that's a,
It's a old tale. It's
yeah.
been done many times.
So if it's that old and it's been done many times, and this is what's happening, like it's just wasting the social worker's time so that they end up with like the 25, 30, 40, 50, whatever cases, and they're getting burnt out. There has to be a way to start qualifying those. Another rumor that we heard, some of these towns in BC where there's just no work, like they're just, it's very poor and there's no work. And somebody has gone through expense of maybe upgrading the house a little bit so that they can have foster kids, but then there's no cases. They will get a friend to make a call against someone they know so that because they know that those kids will come to their place and they'll get the revenue for it. This was a rumor I heard only, but
Like we
it's a
said
rumor
earlier, there's
like
rumors sometimes.
there's truth to rumors. So that's definitely a rumor that needs to be investigated. Yeah. So, yeah, do you know what I mean? So there has
I
to
know what
be
you
a
mean.
way to
I
prevent.
think the starting
Yeah,
point that you're speaking of is fantastic.
yeah, no, I think that there has to be that starting point. Gotta be another check level, because in the case of my daughter, we think that the original call, and they're very vague about what the reasons are because the reasons change, like 4 o'clock Friday night, they just insert another reason to keep
Mhm.
the whole case perpetuating, right? But we think what it was, the allegation was that she was a meth head. Well, we had proof that
You had lots of proof.
that she's not using meth. She's telling you she's not using meth. You've taken what? Her umbilical cord, her urine,
Placenta.
the placenta. That's what they used when I got there was the placenta to,
And all
and
negative results, but yet they're still continuing the case.
well, we never got the results for the from the placenta, but what they used that for was to plant seeds of doubt in me so that I would go back and start fighting with my daughter over, are you using meth and blow? They've said that.
100%. They're because they lost out on
Yeah.
the dad narratives. Now they're going to pin you guys against each other.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because they're just very, very skilled at manipulation. I'm actually quite shocked at how good they are at it. And I kind of think of myself as a fairly aware person, but man, I had nothing. Like I did not know.
They were manipulating you too.
Yeah, I was just hook, line, and sinker. Like they played me until they took the baby, and then all bets were off. It's like, okay, wait a second. Like, what the what? Okay, no, no, this is look at the stakes now. No, they've got the baby. So I had to be a quick study. And even Suzanne said, yeah, Tina, you figured it out pretty fast, which was good.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
need to learn how to checkmate just as quick as they do,
Yep, pretty much. It's some chess game.
but one that you won in the end. Everything that you've been through, I know you gave some clear advice in the book, but I want you to share that type of advice with the audience for anyone that is going through this, anyone that may go through it in the future, anyone that has someone in their life going through it. I know one of the biggest things that you said is first rule of advice, you said, get a lawyer immediately. And then the
Mhm,
second rule of advice, you said, do not, for the love of God, sign anything. And then you
mhm,
also said, which I find very fascinating, you said, if you find yourself in a situation with CPS, so Child Protective Services, stay far away from government funded advocacy.
yeah,
Whew,
yeah.
elaborate, please.
Fortunately, we had enough lucky breaks that we didn't have to go to the provincial advocacy office. But again, they're funded by the government. So
They're funded by the same people that are taking the kid.
I would just be asking the question, okay, are you in my best interest or in the best interest of the job? Or are you in the interest of keeping your job and just making sure that you have lots of kids that need advocating so that you can just keep perpetuating and telling people what they need to hear just so you can just keep collecting your paycheck. But the other thing I will add, it's really important to stay calm too. I think that the social workers, when they come knocking on your door, they can use intimidation. And they were able to coerce with my daughter to get her to sign. something that my daughter, she did not feel comfortable signing, but because they're very good at intimidation and coercion, that my daughter did sign something that she knew in her gut, "No, I don't know if I should be signing this kind of thing," right? But once they had the signature, winky face Kathy took off with it. She jumped in the car and took off, kind of thing. So it's really important that you stay calm, because if you can stay calm, it kind of throws them off a little bit. And I know that people who are going through this, parents who are going through this, if they're young, in their 20s or whatever, and you respond to that intimidation by being scared yourself. I don't know if you're going to believe me when I say that the social workers actually didn't scare me. They confused me, but they didn't scare me. I wasn't easily intimidated by them. And so that helped me remain calm, and that helped me think clearly. You have more rights than you realize as a parent.
Mhm.
So as long as you have lived your life, with clean, and I do think I mentioned this in my book. Like, I was so fortunate that I did not have any, youthful indiscretion that caused me to have a criminal record. Because really, they went looking for dirt, but I mean, they had nothing current on me. If they would have looked in my 20s, I'm sure they would have found something. But it's not relevant to how much I love my granddaughter, how committed I am to my family, and all of the work and all of the expense I went into writing this book, because I couldn't earn an income when I had to drop my life and be by my daughter's side. So I couldn't earn an income, and I wouldn't let my grandbaby out of my sight for like 6 months. And then after that, like, I slowly started to get a little bit of money, but still, I cashed in all my savings, and then we had to live on credit cards because we had no choice.
Yep, and then
We had
no one compensates you for it all
and
afterwards.
nobody call yeah, exactly. I think I remember my husband the following year, he was on the phone to Revenue Canada about getting maybe some tax breaks on the expense that it cost for, like, having to cash in all of my savings and then the extra place to live, because we had to find another place to live. I remember him being on the phone with Canada Revenue, for, like, an hour, but they didn't know what to do because they'd never had a case like that
Of
before. So
course.
it's like, unless you fit into their ticky box, they don't know what the hell to do with you.
Tina, where can
That's
they
what
find you?
So Google "Fancy Prison" by Tina Fumo, and it'll come up on the Amazon, and it'll come up with this one once you air it, Jenelle, and
Exactly.
it'll come up with other information.
Tina, this has been a powerful conversation, and I think it's opened up a lot more questions and answers, but in a good way. You and your daughter and your husband and the rest of your family will never get back all of the time and money that you spent trying to get your granddaughter back, but I mean, she's priceless in the end, right?
She
So
is.
you fought a lot, but I think it was worth it in the end. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a fight I would do 10 times over. Yep, she's irreplaceable, and she's exactly where she's supposed to be. But I wrote the book because I got to look into a system that we really have a lot of work to do.
Mhm. I agree. I agree. And to all of the social workers who are listening out there, we are not shitting on you in particular. We know it's a very tough job that you can get burnout very quickly in, but I'm sure you're questioning the system just as much as we are. So I just want to caveat that. Tina, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I know people will enjoy this episode.
Have a great day.